Well, it's a tragic reality that here in Indiana, we do have children and teens who are being sold for sexual exploitation, and it crosses the state, both urban and rural, different economic areas and classes. So it's a serious problem that we have to address.
I was very active in high school. I was involved in the band, I was involved in sports, I was very active with my friends. So on the outside looking in, even if I had some things going on at home and I had some past abuses, I looked like a pretty well-adjusted teenage kid that was doing pretty well in school. And then this one night, this group of kids came in, just like any other night. It was a convenience store. And this one particular girl stopped and said, "I love the way you do your hair." And as a 16-year-old girl, I was like, oh, wow, thanks. And she had appeared older, and so that's always kind of fun. And so she ended up coming in a couple of nights after that, and we just, again, we're talking, and eventually, she's like, "You should meet me at the mall. We should, just hang out one day." And so I did. I met her down at the mall, and, she ended up taking me shopping. And she was just like, "Oh, that's a really cute shirt. You would look really good in that color." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of expensive." I was a Goodwill kid. I wanted to get the most bang for my buck. To go to a mall to buy something was just kind of outside of my realm of reality. And she's like, "No, I got it. Don't even worry about it, girl." And I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." And then later we ended up going and getting, pedicures. And I had never had a pedicure done before. And I was like, this is really cool. And she's so much fun. And that was just kind of the start of our friendship. And, looking back, I was absolutely being isolated from any other support system. They became my entire world. And again, I think sometimes we have this misperception because of different things in the media that this happens really quickly. This was almost a 6-month investment into my life. And so, no one questioned it for 6 months. And then I was doing French homework. And my mom came home, and she was making fun of the way I was pronouncing some of my words, and I got entirely frustrated. And I called my friend, and I was crying. And I was like, I just can't deal with this. Like, I'm trying to do my homework, and my mom is making fun of me, and she's drunk, and I don't know what to do. And she's like, "Just pack up some stuff and just come over here. Just come stay with us. I'll make sure you get to school. You can have your sister come over and hang out. Like, just don't worry about it no more." And in my 16-year-old brain, I was like, thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to get out of the mess that I thought I was living in. And so I said yes. And I packed up my stuff, and I snuck out, and I ran away for the first time. And so I got to her house, we sat down and had dinner like we had done a dozen times before, and then I was asked a question that changed my entire life. I was asked, would I want to join their escort service? And all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand what's going on. They're talking about that they actually run an escort service, and the stepfather was actually the ringleader of this escort service, and the mom and the daughter both worked for them, and they wanted to give me a really great opportunity to join and make some money. And so as I'm trying to kind of figure out what this all means, they can obviously see panic on my face. And my friend is trying to tell me how great this is, and girl, it has nothing to do with sex. Sex isn't even involved in this. You just get to go on dates and make lots of money. And then, her stepfather rung in. "You want to save up money for college, right?" "Well, yeah, of course I do. This is a great way to do that. You can make money really quickly." And it was such a normalized conversation, literally as we're eating dinner at the kitchen table. And I remember at one point looking out the kitchen window and thinking, I'm in a completely different world, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I very simply said, I really don't want to be part of this. And they kind of looked at each other, and they're like, that's fine. We're here for you. Whatever you need, let us know. But if you change your mind, let me know. And then I continued eating my spaghetti and going on with dinner, thinking that was going to be the end of that conversation. So that night, it was a Friday night, and my friend had asked me if I'd wanted to go out with her to a party. There were other kids there. There was drinking and music. I didn't drink, so my friend grabbed me a Coke. She handed it to me. Again, thought everything was pretty normal. Started drinking my Coke, and then I completely blacked out. But what I do remember is waking up to being sexually assaulted. When the rape was over and the person left the room, I remember sitting there in the dark thinking, I wish I was just dead. Like, how am I even here? What was going on? Where was I? What was I going to do? Where were my clothes? And then the door opened, and I seen Dante, who was my friend's stepfather, and he threw me my clothes, and he looked me in my face and said, "This is the last time you ever tell me no."
What has come just within the first 6 months of our program is that we have seen an incredible increase in the number of young people who have been identified as trafficked victims or victims of sexual exploitation. In the first 6 months, we served over 90 youth through our service partners who had been identified as victims of trafficking.
When we first started this work, we were seeing maybe a couple of kids a month, and just in the first quarter of this year, we served 42 youth. And so that just kind of highlights the importance of the awareness efforts that have been taking place across the state. And we're seeing kids from all across the state. I think it's important to know that these are not just kids from Indianapolis. These are not just inner city kids. We are seeing kids from suburban communities. We are seeing kids from rural communities. We are seeing kids from different socioeconomic backgrounds. There's really no profile of a standard trafficking victim.
This is a really important issue and something that we need to pay more attention to so that we can end this in Indiana.
A lot of times people in the community think that a human trafficking victim is going to look like someone that's all chained up, roped up, with bruises all over them, and that's not always the case. In Aubrey's situation, she was an honor roll student doing really well in school. She was in the band, looked like a typical teenage girl. But when things were happening in her life, no one said anything, and it just would have taken one person calling the National Human Trafficking Hotline, calling 911, saying something to intervene to help her.
Well, it's really the demand for commercial sex that fuels the human trafficking industry, and it results in a lifetime of trauma for the victims of human trafficking.
So looking back, kind of what an average day looked like for me, some of it still looked like I was a teenager. I remember listening to music with my friend, getting dressed, putting on makeup, kind of getting ready to go work that evening. But I wasn't getting dressed to go hang out with other friends or to even do something after school. I was getting dressed to go be sold. And so that's kind of where that division happened, where I was, still a kid living a very different life. We would go to really big events. So we would go to big hotel parties or big house parties. Where I was trafficked was in Colorado Springs, and there's an area called the Broadmoor. Huge, beautiful mansions that were housing these types of parties. And so we'd go into these really nice, extravagant areas, and we'd just go in what looked like a party. But the assumption was that we were told very clearly is that we were supposed to do whatever was asked of us by whoever asked. So I'd go to a party and hang out with people, and if somebody wanted to have sex with me, I couldn't tell them no. And that was just kind of what my life was at night. And that happened every single night. There was never these kind of stereotypical pedophile looking men that were kind of creeping around trying to have sex with kids. They look like regular everyday people. That's who purchased me. We're college kids, we're professionals, we're attorneys. Most of them were married men that were very proud to show me pictures of their kids and their wives and then go rape me. So I had a very kind of, completely dual life of knowing something was off and not feeling great about it, having no one to talk to, because there were just hundreds of people involved in this. from the people that were attending the parties to other girls that were around me also being exploited. And it just kind of seemed like I was open to this whole dark side of the world. And what was I supposed to do with that? Because everyone was okay with that. And so it must have been just me, because everyone was really excited about what was going on. So at this point of kind of my story, a lot of people ask me, why didn't you just leave? There was something inside of you that obviously was triggering that this was a bad situation, and why didn't you just go? And that's a great question that I want to kind of try to give an answer to. One, I was 16. So I didn't even have the ability to make really good rational decisions. I felt like this was my choice because I had made a choice to have a friend that led me to this decision. I had chose to run away. I had chose to not leave immediately that night. And I think because of my past abuse, I just felt like this was my life. These were the cards that I was dealt, and I didn't have any other options, and I had to just suck it up and live with it. Plus, all the people that were around this issue and these experiences, I didn't know who I could trust. Could I really trust police because there were police around this issue? Could I really trust an adult because there were obviously adults that were buying us? I didn't know if there was anyone that I could turn to that wasn't involved in this, so I didn't feel like I could trust anybody. And then there was lots of violence that we witnessed and experienced. And it was very inconsistent violence. You know, sometimes I would do something wrong and then one of the other girls would get beat for it. Maybe they would do something right and I was like, oh, good for you. And then I would get beat for it. And so there was this level of violence that we never quite understood what was going on. There was always lots of threats. There was weapons around. These guys were obviously pretty dangerous. I remember one girl had said something to Dante and they took her out on the street and they just were jumping on her and kicking her, and then she disappeared. I don't know what happened to her. Maybe they took her to the emergency room. Maybe she ended up dead. I don't know. But that was enough in my 16-year-old brain to realize I had no other option than to just go ahead and keep doing what I was doing. I was never sold as Aubrey. I was sold as Jenny, or I was sold as Lexus. I was given background stories and ages of who I was supposed to be any given night that I was working. So it was easy for me to detach and act like it wasn't really happening. And a lot of girls disassociate. And as a professional, we can think that's a mental health issue. And I think possibly, but more importantly, this is a trauma reaction. I was being victimized and traumatized. And as a part of a way to survive this trauma, I disassociated from what was happening to me. We weren't allowed to use drugs while we were working. And so this was done to me sober. And so to be able to deal with this level of trauma, I had to pretend this was happening to someone else. And that's something that's very common with girls that have been exploited.
In our impact program from day one, the girls are given a community-based therapist who will work with them and their family. One thing that is so important and critical to the success of these clients is family involvement, as well as creating a positive support system for them after treatment. I also provide community-based services across the state of Indiana, doing individual and family therapy with children and families specific to this population. And one thing we're seeing is that you can do more harm than good if you have not had the specific training to this population.
As we've looked at this issue, what we've identified as a huge need really is that service provision piece. There are only a couple of folks in the state, a couple of agencies that really focus on this. They are centrally located in Indiana. So when we get to the outlying parts of the state, whether it's the northern part or the southern part, there's very little to connect youth to resources.
These girls are used to being labeled a certain way, and it's important as a provider to remember this is not who they are. There's so much more underneath that, and not defining them by the trafficked victim or the exploited kid that was forced into prostitution. And one thing I try to impress with the girls is that this is just a chapter in their story. It's not the story. And so for them to continue to be successful, they have to keep writing their story to have the ending they want.
The Indiana Trafficking Victim Assistance Program, or IVAP, provides assistance to service providers in the means of financial ways all across the state of Indiana. Our regional coordinators established a network of service providers that they reach out to that help these victims that have been identified as victims of human trafficking. So in addition to that, we also provide guidance if organizations or individuals have questions about human trafficking. What does it look like? What are the red flags? We can also assist them by calling our central office or one of our regional coordinators that are placed throughout the state. And then we seek to raise awareness as it relates to human trafficking. A lot of folks don't know that this issue happens here in Indiana, and it happens from Gary to Evansville, from Terre Haute to Richmond.
When we get a call at the Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline, we have the opportunity to intervene in the lives of children, families, and youth. I've seen this make all the difference in the world for our families, children, and youth. Please, if you see something, say something.
If you suspect a child is being trafficked, it's very important that you do report it to the tip line. I'd rather investigate a tip and it turn out to be nothing than the tip not go reported to authorities. If you make a report on the tip line, you may remain anonymous. Just keep in mind that the information that you provide is all the information that we have at that time.
So go ahead and get your phone out now. I've got an important number that you need to have in your phone. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is a number that everyone needs, because if we come into contact with someone who we think might be a victim of trafficking, we need to do our part to help. The number is 888-3737-888. Again, the number is 888-3737-888.
So when I was living in a world of exploitation and feeling like I had absolutely no chance of living beyond that, I really wish that you would have trusted your gut to call. I didn't need you to get involved. I didn't need you to stop and put me in your car. I just needed you to make a phone call. And that's all that we need you to do now, is to make a phone call. When you see a kid in a suspicious situation that's maybe in the wrong place at the wrong time, something that just makes you feel funny, you don't even have to know for certain that what you're seeing is really true. You just have to make a phone call, because I really wish that someone had done that for me.